To create the first layer, I'm going to start with my fabric photo. So to open that in Photoshop, I'm going to go File, Open, and this is where I can browse for my pictures. Here's my fabric picture right here. And click Open. Now this file is just a little bit smaller than I would have liked, but since it's just a background texture, it's not going to matter too much if the resolution isn't perfect, but I do want the file to be big enough to maintain the high resolution of any other images that I might have found that were bigger than this one. So I'm actually going to go ahead and increase the size of this layer just a little bit. I'm going to go into Image, Image Size. And when I'm in image size, you can see that the overall dimensions of this file are 1280 by 800. That's just a little bit small. I would prefer that the height be, the shortest side be about 1200. So I'm going to enter that in the box, and that automatically changes the width so that it's the same proportion. And now we have a file that is 1920 pixels by 1200 pixels. And I'm going to click OK, and you'll see it got a little bit bigger. Like I said, it didn't really improve the quality of the picture. It just interpolated the pixels, meaning that the pixels that were already there, it just mathematically added more pixels to what it thought those pixels ought to be. That's not as good as just taking a photograph that's already been shot at 19 by 1200 pixels. But since this is a composite image, I don't think it's going to matter too much. Okay, so I wanted to restrict the color on this file a little bit. And as you can see, the fabric right now is a little bit on the gold side, and I'd like it to look a little bit more neutral than that. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation. And I'm just going to take the saturation down a little bit. That'll remove some of the color. Okay, so it looks a little bit more like a silver or a pewter color. I may try to play around with the lightness a little bit, but no, if I do that, I'm not really happy with the results. So I'm going to put that back to where I found it. So it's just a little bit desaturated. I like it better this way, and I'm going to click OK. And now I'm ready to add my swan. I'm going to open that file up as well. File, Open. And I'm going to click on the picture of the swan, which I believe is this one. And there's two ways that you can get this picture into the other picture. I'm going to show you both ways. Okay, the way I think is the easiest is I take my Move tool, which is the tool up here at the top of the toolbar. I grab the picture with my Move tool, press my mouse button down, drag the cursor up to touch the tab on the picture of the fabric, and then without releasing my mouse button, drag it back down, and once my cursor is somewhere inside the picture of the fabric, I can release my mouse button, and there is the swan. Now, if that was too complicated, some people don't like to do it that way, I'm going to just throw this layer in the trash, and I'll show you another way to accomplish the same goal. Go back to the picture of the swan, click Select All, Edit Copy or Command C. Okay, open up the picture of the fabric, Edit Paste or Command V. And there's the swan. Okay, now as you can see, the swan is also a little smaller than I would like for it to be. I want to scale it up, and I want to make sure that it fits inside the outer frame that I have here. I don't want the four edges of my swan showing. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go Edit, Free Transform, or Command T. I recommend you learn all these shortcuts that'll make your life a lot easier. And I get a little box with handlebars on it. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, this is very important, you can't skip this step. I'm going to press and hold my Shift key. So right now I'm holding my Shift key down, and what that's going to do is when I grab the corner of the object that I'm trying to transform, it constrains the proportions so that it doesn't get stretched out. Okay, and what I need to have happen is I need to scale it until the top and the bottom of the frame match the top and the bottom of the picture of my fabric. Now what that's going to do is it means I'm going to have to crop my picture a little bit, because the picture of the swan was wider than and not as tall as the picture of the fabric. So the only way to do this is to crop it. Okay, but I want the bottom and the top to match the bottom and the top of the fabric layer. And then I have to decide what I want to crop out. Do I want to move it all the way over to the left? Do I want to move it all the way over to the right? And I decided that since I wanted to emphasize the movement of the swan, I wanted to get as much of this background that has the rippling water effect behind him in the picture. I decided to move the swan as close to the right-hand side as I could. So I've got him right here. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to either click this little check mark up here to apply the transformation, or I can just hit my return key. Either way. So I'm going to do that. Okay. So now I've got two layers. I've got my swan and I've got my background layer, which is the fabric, but I want to be able to see them both at the same time, and I have to play around with transparency. So one thing that I found worked better for me on this particular file was if I had the background actually, the layer that's called background, if I actually had that on top of the swan layer. So I can't move it when it's a background layer. I have to double click it. That renames it layer 0. And now I can drag it over top the swan. Okay, so I can, right now, since I haven't done any blending modes, I can only see one layer at a time. But when I put a blending mode on the fabric, and I found that hard light worked the best for me. Now I've got a transparency happening, and I can see both the fabric and the swan. I'm pretty happy with the way this looks, except I feel like there's a little bit too much busyness of the fabric going on inside the swan. I want the swan to stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to mask out part of the fabric layer. I'm going to create a layer mask, which is this icon right here. Okay, make sure that your mask is highlighted on all four sides by a little white box. Make sure you use your paintbrush and that your paint color is black. And I've got my opacity for my brush set at about 40% because I don't want to erase all of it. I just want to erase some of it. Okay, so maybe I'll go ahead and increase my opacity to more like 65%, so this goes a little faster. And so what this is doing is it's partially erasing the fabric inside the swan. Make my brush just a little bit bigger. And now the swan stands out against the background a little bit more. Okay, so I don't have to be too precise about this. If I want to get rid of a little more detail, I can just release my mouse button and come back over it again. And the effect is a little bit more subtle now. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead now and save my work. So I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm going to give it a name since the word I'm using is elegant or elegance. I'm going to name it Elegance and click Save. And in the next video, I'll show you how I did the next layer with the pearls.